Hello, I'm your host, Debbie Salmon, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk in Del Mar. It's said that failure is often more frequently from a want of energy than from a want of capital. And I have the perfect person to discuss that with me here today, my guest, Tom Mannheim, who is a money advisor, money counselor.
Money therapist.
Money therapist. Okay, well, there you go. I'm sorry about that. So, Tom, tell me a little bit about your background first as a financial advisor, because I understand you have quite a significant history. You really know what you're talking about.
I retired after 18 years of being a financial advisor for two major firms, and was always in the top echelon for productivity. Managed about $175 million of individuals' money. And the reason I think that's important as a money therapist is I have that practical experience of you getting upset because things aren't working out, or elated because they are.
Right.
And so I have that side down.
Okay, all right. So after such, that's a very successful career. That must have been, I can't imagine an incentive that would induce you to move away from that. So what's kind of the trigger point or the catalyst for having you choose a new path or a different career?
Good question. I was going to school at night, getting my master's at about year 10 of my brokerage career. Because I knew it wasn't fulfilling, there was something else there, but I wasn't sure what it was. And when my son and I were going to his baseball practice at Valley Baseball Center, riding our bikes, crossing Carmel Valley Road, there in where Sereno Valley Boulevard used to go through, and a car came out of nowhere and came through the red light and hit my son, threw him about 10 feet into the air and about 15 feet down the road. And at that point, as a parent, I think we've all had experiences with our children being injured, and I just felt like he was dead. And when I got out there, his eyes were kind of going back and forth, and he was laying there, his bicycle helmet was decimated. And he said, Dad, I'm not sure I'm coming back.
Wow.
And this is a 9-year-old boy. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm sitting up above us right now looking down, and I'm not sure I'm coming back to Earth.
Wow. How horrifying for you.
I mean, at that point in time, and that was the point in time I said, you know what? No matter what happens, I'm changing my career, and I'm going to do something more purposeful in my life. And,
wow, that's quite a story. That's quite a catalyst. I don't think people have that great an epiphany in terms of making a change in their life.
And hopefully they don't have to have something like that. But it was great because it turned out well. He was life flighted to Children's. Miraculously walked out of there with nothing other than a slight concussion. And I think the other thing I took from that, Debbie, was that the community came out. I didn't know a lot of these people. 2 people pulled their trucks up and blocked traffic for us. There was literally a human shield of women and children around us while we sat in the middle of the intersection for like an hour and a half for the helicopter to get there. And I just felt like all this love pouring in for both of us. And it restored my faith in humanity.
It sounds to me that you're really fortunate to have had that situation, especially since it turned out so well, but that to be in a position where you have something successful going on, you have a sense that it's not quite fulfilling, and you have an opportunity to redirect your life. And I think a lot of people probably have those things going on. I think a lot of us, we're very busy, we feel successful, or we think we're successful or whatever, but we have that something missing, but there's nothing really that turns our attention to listen to that voice. There's something there, and you ignore it. Why would I leave my job? How could I leave my job? I have a mortgage. I have my children to take care of. And so you don't allow yourself the opportunity to explore that. So what have you done? Now you went and you got your license in marriage family therapy.
Yes.
So now how are you using that combined with your experience in the financial world?
Well, I've taken the psychological side, the psyche, understanding of the psyche, and combined that with the financial side to work with people in trying to create a happier life, something that's that's more purposeful for them. And because a lot of us are out there in the world and we are going to work and we, like you're saying, we're on the hamster wheel, spinning, and we don't have a chance to, but we know something's missing. We're not fulfilled on the inside. And there's been David Myers did a study, he's a brilliant man, several books on happiness, and said that actually happiness is declining in the United States on the studies they've done since the 1960s, fairly dramatically. And we're not any happier today, despite having more wealth than anyone else in the world has ever had. We as a nation have more money, and yet we're not as happy as we were 20, 30 years ago.
Okay, and I know this isn't a professional term, but do you think that comes from people having a sense of happiness being other-defined as opposed to self-defined? So it seems like your work, in terms of what you do, is actually looking at people's internal or what your own personal issues are with money or success or whatever.
Yes, and I think that's true. I think there's some general categories we can say that we are, as a society, are having trouble with, that are getting in our way of having a healthy relationship with money or a more fulfilling relationship. But yes, I think it's an individual basis, absolutely.
Okay, so how do you do this work with people? So I understand you have a series, you've written a couple of books, you've run some workshops, that sort of stuff. So how is that going for you? Or for other people as well?
You know, the book, the one that's in the bookstores now, is more of a diagnosis of what games we play with money.
Okay.
And so there's an assessment in the beginning, and it talks about, I'm in it for the power, or for sex. Money is going to bring me sex, or money is going to bring me not having to feel like I'm a failure in other parts of my life. It's a protection for me. Or maybe if I hoard it, then I'm not going to end up being a bag lady or bag man down the road.
Right.
So there are all these games that we play. But I think I got away from your question.
No, well, what you're describing in terms of the book is money is a means. You know, you're seeing it's whatever it's identifying whatever the end it is. But I guess I'm saying in terms of the workshop, are you actively practicing? I know you were teaching at the extension, doing some extension courses and some workshops. So how are you? You also do some private practice.
Yes.
But I understand you're taking some time off to devote to something else now. So what is that?
Well, the last 3 years of my life have been a little bit of private practice, and intentionally, and I've been working on my PhD in psychology, because what I found is that there's not a lot of information out there for us on money and spirituality, or how to work with money differently. I mean, there's all the self-help books about, you know, how to create millions of dollars, but there's nothing about how to become more fulfilled on the inside in the relationship with money. So I'm working on my dissertation right now along those lines.
Okay, so a lot of the other books seem to be focused on, you know, the 1 Minute Millionaire, how to make a million or whatever. So it's really about having money, acquiring money. You know, there's so many books, you're right, about, you know, the quick fix, which is the fix is getting more money.
Yes.
But it seems to me that your workshop material is directed more at the money is kind of out here, and let's look at what's inside. Now that must be very confronting for people. You know, you're talking about, talk to people that have attended the workshop or looked through the workshop. There's some stuff in there that really hits you in the face. You have to resolve some issues. So what kinds of things do you look at?
Well, when I do the workshops, which I'll start again in another year and a half when I'm done with my doctorate.
I need you sooner than that. Could you just run? No, I'm kidding. Okay, anyway, go ahead.
You come and see me individually.
Okay, all right.
but I think the beauty of that is we take a look at the subconscious of what's been dumped into our subconscious with money. And because that's what triggers a lot of times when we are going to Nordstrom's to go buy something. We don't realize how we got there and why we're there. But you know, maybe it's, well, I had a hard day today. I just closed a big account and I deserve this. And so I'm going to feel better because I buy that used blazer or whatever it is.
Or it could be other things like, I got the coupon in the mail, I better go because I'm going to save some money by buying the 2-for-1s. I'm kidding.
Yes.
I'm kidding.
No, but exactly. Exactly. And so I'll miss out if I don't do that.
Okay.
So it's taking a look at not just the media that dumps all these messages when we're watching TV, all these commercials. You know, maybe they're paying for this. I shouldn't be saying these things.
No. So we're community television, so it's okay.
Right.
No, you can't be bought in this program.
Good. I hope I can't be bought anyway. But at any rate, you know, we look at the subconscious of what's going on. What messages did we get from our parents growing up? What happened in the community we grew up in? Where there's some silent messages about, you know, you had to have a lot because you were going to be better than than people next door if you had more money. So looking at individually what transpired in our lives and what we're carrying around towards money that's underneath the radar.
Okay, and so some of that might be like, I think of my own experience in terms of my mother came from a family that was not quite as well off as my father's family. And one of her feelings was that, maybe, there's a richer family, there's an inequity, there's a social status attached to money, which creates an insecurity, which does that translated to me as a child potentially as a fear around money or an association with money that I might not even have been conscious about.
Absolutely.
Because I wasn't dealing with money at the age that affected me.
Sure, and back then especially, no one really talked about it in a family setting. You got received an allowance maybe, and you saw your parents maybe go off behind closed doors and argue or something.
Right.
But you brought up an interesting point, Debbie, and that is that we, as individuals, have a difficult time talking about money. I've got away from where I was going with this.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
But you were talking about your parents. Your mom and your dad most likely married each other because there were differences with money, and they were going to try to become whole
together,
through the marriage.
Right? Okay, exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So in
It's
other words,
the classic combination. You're attracted to people that offer something, right? That make you whole, and in some case, that can be a deficit or a surplus in the money piece of your personality or your history, family history.
And that's the key point, because your mom coming maybe from these feelings of less than, and your father maybe of entitlement. They come together, and in marriage, in this new form that's being created between the two of them going forward as married couple, they're going to have to work out how they're going to be with money. And if it doesn't work out, a lot of times, and we know this, money is the #1 cause of divorce in the United States. And so if it doesn't work out, we have a tendency to leave the relationship.
Okay, and do you think the reason for that is money a taboo of some sort, that there's a difficulty talking about it, or?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. We have, it's out there. We cannot talk about money. How often do you go to dinner with friends and put your W-2s on the table and, talk about...
Well, only if I want to make a joke, then I put mine on there, but but I get your point, yeah.
It's hidden.
It is.
And maybe there's a persona that we want to present, and we do this by the cars we drive. What is it, 80% of all Mercedes are leased? And you wouldn't know that because there's so many people driving them around, at least in Southern California, Del Mar. But so we try to create a certain image with money or a certain presentation. And that may not be who we really are underneath it, but we think that's going to bring us that happiness or status.
Well, and the notion of the taboo, I guess when I think about it, it's not often that people don't ask questions around how much do you have, or how much do you earn, or how much. I mean, I know myself, sometimes people will be talking about something, and I will say, if you don't mind me asking, how much did that, like a vacation, they went somewhere, and I'm thinking, how much did it cost? Because I'm trying to work out what, I really only am getting information because I want to know if I can afford to do it.
Right.
But I feel that I'm treading on sacred territory by asking the cost question.
Yes.
So.
Difficult questions, a good question. And I want to applaud you for that, because it's being honest. And someone can say, hey, you know what, I choose not to tell you, or they'll change the subject or something. But I do the same thing, not just in therapy, but, if someone said, we just went to Borrego Springs and stayed at somewhere, and I ask how much it was, I just, it's like you're saying, I just want to know for my own.
Right.
And yet, there's this stigma of, oh my God, don't go there.
You're digging in my personal stuff, stay away.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they'll tell you about their divorce or an affair that's going on much more than they would about disclosing how much they are, or if they're having a financial hardship.
That's true, when I come to think about it. Okay, well, we're going to take a short break. Okay. And after the break, I want to talk to you about what people will actually achieve by having a better understanding about their financial matters. So stay with us. We're going to be right back with more of Coffee Talk in Del Mar. Welcome back to Coffee Talk in Del Mar. I'm your host, Debbie Salmon, and I'm with Tom Mannheim, who is a money therapist. So money before the money. So there you go. See, I've got money on the brain. Tom, before the break, we mentioned that we were going to get down to what I'm really interested in is what people will achieve in their life, or what can they achieve by having a better understanding or a better relationship with money.
By having a healthier relationship, I think that there's a clearing away of a lot of the excess energy that goes into things that we worry about, grind our teeth about at night when we're sleeping, have an extra drink about. So when we get rid of some of that, we feel like we have more energy to and more enthusiasm to approach things that really matter to us, like our hobbies, our kids, things that we like to do.
That's always been one of the great paradoxes to me, is that when you have lots of free time, you don't usually have much money, because and when you're really busy and working and making lots of money, you don't have a lot of free time, so you don't have any time to spend your money. So have you found that that's the case with a lot of people that come to you in seeking advice?
Absolutely. And there's a balance there between that, really enjoying your life and being creative with how you approach life, and being a workaholic. I mean, we're going to do extremes here, but there's a balance there, and that's what hopefully we're striving for in the work that I do with people.
Okay. Now, in the books and the workshops, you bring things together. Money, love, spirit. So there seems to be a spiritual dimension to your approach to money. So can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, there is. I think there's a sense of spiritual values. We want to take a look at belief systems that we're operating with, and if you can, and to me, let me just say this, preface this by saying, all the religions, everything, in their purest sense, say the same thing to me. They're all about brotherly love, community, supporting each other, trying to make sure there's less poverty, better health care, more equal access to education, all these things. So that's where the spiritual component comes in, that believing that money's not our God, that there is something else out there that is going to be able to, we can have faith in, that's going to, we're going to be okay.
Right. And do you think people have a difficulty with that? Their higher power is quite often the almighty dollar, as opposed to something else that's of a more spiritual nature?
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, as a society, and I don't know if it goes back to, I don't want to give away too much of my dissertation here, but I think it does go back to what Max Weber was talking about in the Protestant work ethic, that we got caught up in the technical gadgets and all these things that can make us happy. And we kind of lost sight of why we're here on this planet. And that's to enjoy life and to be with each other, to have love and to operate, in community and towards a unique, something we're trying to accomplish together for the betterment of all.
Right. So the quality of our time and the quality of our life is improved by our relationships rather than by the amount of money, or the Midas concept of the amount of gold in our dungeon kind of thing.
And I don't want to say seem like I'm against the capitalist system. Absolutely not. I think it's there for us to provide a certain amount of money so that we can have freedom in our lives. But I think the problem is, just like the pendulum swung too far to that side, and so it needs to come back to center.
But what is the definition of capitalism? I mean, capitalism is really about the opportunity to make money. It's not necessarily about an all-consuming greed, which is material. I mean, there is a difference between materialism and capitalism.
Yes.
And so I lived overseas for a long time, and one of the things coming back to this country, I've only been back for a couple of years, but I did notice, which was there was a shift when I left 20 years ago towards a lot of people seeming to be interested in getting the most that they could for the cheapest that they could get it for. So discounts and bargains and sales, and how can I find the best deal? And sometimes, I was making a joke earlier, but really there's a sale, well, I'm going to go because I might miss out, as opposed to the first question being, do I really need the item that's in the brochure? And then the question of want versus need. I mean, how do we sort out our needs from our wants in a financial sort of hierarchy?
Well, that's one of the games that's mentioned in my book. Is the bargain game.
And I haven't even read it yet.
Yes, it's the bargain game. And that's, because there's a certain amount of ingenuity that comes from the person who can find the best bargain, the best deal. We're smarter than others because we can do that. And so I think we all have games we play. I'm a work in progress with money as well. So what I'm getting at is the ability to recognize the game and stop playing it if you choose to.
Okay, and find a different payoff. Because
Right.
obviously all those games have, in psychological terms, they all have a payoff, which is why we keep doing them.
Yes. And you were talking earlier, too, is it okay if I just
Yeah, sure.
you about the bankruptcy?
Uh-huh, yeah.
The fact that there's projections that this will be the highest year for bankruptcy filings in the United States. And we had 1.6 million last year. And the fastest growing segment are 25-year-olds.
And why is it? I would have thought, I mean, I think back to when I was 25, and I'm sure I wasn't the normal 25-year-old, but I hadn't really amassed much beside a really cool couch and some orange crepe. I was still in the early days of, amassing my fortune, such as it is. And so, that seems an odd group to be the ones that are the hardest hit by bankruptcy. Why is that, I guess?
Well, I think there's a sense of instant gratification that the generation that our children have. Playing the Xbox, it's not the imagination of things that are out there in the future. It's what can I have now, do today.
Okay.
And so because of that, I think it's created, it's not that they're any different than us. They have the same, I think, values, but there's this sense of wanting to have it right now.
They have a different context, very different context than I
Yes.
did when I was a child.
I think technology is part of that as well. But because of that, they've gotten themselves into trouble because the media is very slyly has gotten us to buy into, well, if you look like this and you dress like this and you work out and you have all these things around you, have that car, then you're going to catch this person and you're going to be more successful in life and you're going to be happier and you're going to be able to have more parties and
your life's going to be more complete.
Yes.
Which is the advertising mantra.
Yes.
And I guess at that age, it's really when you have the least experience in managing money. I mean, unless you've grown up in a household where, pocket money and, I can remember my grandmother took me down and opened a bank account. When I was 11, I put in my $25 that I got for my Christmas check or whatever it was. And so I had my own account and, those kinds of things are, were kind of fun in terms of my early understanding of the value of money. What things my parents made me buy, what choices I had to make in terms of spending my own money versus expecting that they would, give me money for certain things.
Yeah, and that's very healthy. What your parents, because you had some experiences when you were little about how to use money differently. You experimented with it. And I think that's maybe a lot of our generation now with the 25-year-olds is we give our kids a lot. And they don't have that opportunity to experiment.
Okay, but I'm very alarmed to hear you say that you're predicting, or they, whoever they are, is predicting that this is the worst year for bankruptcies. Right. And haven't we just had some recent legislation that's actually put a protective layer for the credit card companies, who, God forbid, but I think they're actually exacerbating the problem
right.
by the freewheeling credit limits that we can get. So how do you see that problem?
Well, I think it's first of all, we as individuals have to take responsibility and be accountable with how we use money, and we've let go of that, and we're kind of projecting now onto credit card companies. But I do think they entice us to do things that maybe aren't in our best interest. And clearly, this bankruptcy bill is about them getting protection so that you cannot walk away from your debts. No matter if, some of these reasons people declare bankruptcy are very significant. They're because they lost a job and they try to keep their home.
Right.
They had a health crisis come up and they don't have health care insurance. So there's a lot of reasons that you and I could make sense out of. They should be allowed to have an exemption.
Right.
But I think
they're responsible, hardworking people that have fallen on hard times or whatever, as opposed to they've just been out spending wildly and going on spending sprees and suddenly hit their credit limit and don't want to pay off their debts.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the bankruptcy. The other thing I have to say is that a lot of these credit card reconciliation places that you can go to try to work out your debt, those are sponsored. Those companies that do that get checks directly from the credit card companies.
Oh, okay.
And so you wonder how someone can be on your side when they're being backed by the credit card companies, even though they're supposed to be a nonprofit. And look, I have trouble with that. Mm-hmm. I would love to see, idealistically, the government just actually create government entities that support people that are having crisis with money.
So that would be more, obviously, in the way of they would have more counseling or learn more discipline or whatever in terms of money management. You're right.
Yeah,
so,
we don't do a good job of that.
Right, which is really kind of now the path that you're on when you think about it. That's really what your work is about in terms of helping people, isn't it?
Yes. I would love to see us as a society be oriented towards, instead of trying to amass the greatest amount of money, to be able to try to eliminate world hunger. I mean, what's it, 10,000, I got to get this straight, I think it's down to 5,000 children die a day because they don't have enough food in the world. And it doesn't take a lot to stop that. In fact, and there was an article in, I think it was actually, I can't remember the book, but this is dangerous to cite something generalized. But if the United States were to just simply take 25% away from our defense budget, we could eliminate not just poverty in the world, but improve education and healthcare as well, so that the amount of newborn deaths and all these other things wouldn't be taking place.
Right. And of course, the sad part of that as a statistic is that you actually have to find somebody who could actually manage that, take that 25% slice and effectively management. Because of course, with the pot of money always goes the issues of management. And we're dealing obviously with people that are out there in the world that have their childhood wounding or their childhood issues related to the clashes of culture that come from their parents or their context that maybe make them good money managers or not.
That's true. But I do believe that humanity rises to the occasion, and when things are going to get rough, whether it's because the dollar is declining and we're going into recession, and we'll step up. I think it's just being aware that as more of us talk about these things, the level of consciousness rises for all of humanity.
And it's kind of the way you described the situation with your son, that you actually had that, people came to you in your time of crisis, that consciousness was there, and that love and the awareness of your problem and your predicament was there, and people were open to that. So I'm glad to see that you're doing work that helps people get in touch with that, and hopefully there's more of that available to all of us.
Absolutely. And that was a day that just opened my eyes to, there was a man an Indian man, who I had no idea he was, and he was like really guilt-provoked by the fact that he said, I could have pulled my van out in front of the oncoming car and taken the hit, and I don't know what had happened to my own kids in the back seat, he said, but just the fact that he came to the hospital and told me about that.
Right.
He took the time, and then he later came to our home with a present for my son. And it was just unbelievable that this exists. I get shivers.
Yeah, I do too. That's a great story. I mean, it's an amazing story. I'm sorry that it happened to your son, but I'm so glad that he survived. Well, I've really enjoyed the time that we've had with you, and I hope that our viewers have enjoyed it as well. It's been really nice meeting you, Tom, and thank you very much. Good luck with your workshops and that PhD. I know how those theses can be. Thank you very much for watching us on Coffee Talk in Del Mar. So if you have any issues with love or money, maybe you want to check out our local guru, money therapist, Tom Mannheim. Thank you very much for joining us, Coffee Talk in Del Mar. I'm your host, Debbie Salmon.